Welcome to my American History Notes, where I discuss conclusions I've drawn from studying American history. You, I'm not expecting anyone to agree with my conclusions, any of them, but I do hope that you will at least endeavor to learn about the people, events, places, concepts, ideas, dates that I bring forward so you can be conversant in American history and know even more than I'm discussing. This is just a survey. This is like the surface. This is just to say, hey, the Civil War happened. Here's the dates. I mean, you just need to know. And of course, you're going to find things that interest you, so you should dig into those. But I'm not telling you I'm the authority on this or that. No, I'm not. I'm just a regular person who knows a little bit about history and wants to share what he's learned with you. So I hope you'll be doing your own study in American history. And we're going to start today where I pick up where I left off last time. So Lincoln's declaration of a national day of Thanksgiving in 1863 has been seen by some as one step closer to the federal government's replacement as the Americans' final authority in matters of prayer morality over the Bible. Notice how previously Andrew Jackson had refused to proclaim a day of prayer for a cholera epidemic, insisting it was not the civil leader's place to do so, but only reserved for preachers to call for such things. And there was a law in Tennessee, I believe it was, that forbade preachers from even running for office at one time in early American history. So this is my opinion only, not to be taken as necessary for historical literacy. You just need to form your own opinion. The naval blockade was slowly strangling the Southern economy, and blockade runners used forts like Fort Wagner in South Carolina. After several assaults by Union troops, including black Union soldiers, it was abandoned, and Charleston ceased to be a haven for blockade runners. With Grant now the commander in 1864, the era of total war arrived. It was a year of many important battles and campaigns, such as battles for Petersburg and Richmond, Cold Harbor, and New Market, plus General Sherman's brutal march through Georgia, cutting a 60-mile wide swath of destruction from Atlanta to the sea, as the Union Army killed white and black Southern civilians, as well as perpetrating rape and theft, although it depends on who you read. Some people will say it was very minor. It was just occasional incidents. And some people will say, no, it was a war crime. Um, but if you think about it, any army moving through enemy territory, civilian territory, during a war has been as brutal as this, you can imagine what the truth is. So modern submarine warfare was presaged when the CSS Hunley sunk the USS Housatonic. Finally, the war ended officially with Lee surrender to Granite Appomattox Courthouse on April 9th, 1865, and President Andrew Johnson, serving as Lincoln had been assassinated just 5 days later on April 14th, issued a proclamation of amnesty on May 29th. Great Britain had not entered the war on the side of the South as the Confederates had hoped. There's a great deal more to examine in depth on the diplomatic interaction between Spain, France, England, and the Confederacy, and in particular, how France was supporting the Emperor Maximilian in Mexico, and that Lincoln had supplied his Mexican opponents with military support even during our own Civil War. Europe was poised once again to destroy our nation, but this was not done. The war was fought by common men, and those who survived went back to their ordinary lives. Two examples of this were John and Wilson Ruckman, who served continuously from 1861 to 1864 in Company A of the Union's 35th Illinois Volunteer Infantry, seeing action at Pea Ridge, Stones River, Chickamauga, and Kennesaw Mountain. Their nephew, who served as a general for President Woodrow Wilson, John Wilson Ruckman, was named after them, and he was the grandfather of a preacher, Peter S. Ruckman, who was very influential in my life and my view of the Bible. So I just thought that was interesting. Lincoln had beaten his former general uh, McClellan in his reelection bid in 1864, with the Union now being victorious on the battlefield, helping him greatly. He stated that he wanted to heal the wounds of the nation and that a just and lasting peace was desirable. He was assassinated while watching a play at Ford Theater in Washington by actor and Southern sympathizer John Wilkes Booth. Several decades later, retired General Thomas Harris, who served on the committee that investigated and prosecuted Lincoln's assassins, as there was a conspiracy with many people involved, implicated the Pope in the action with his book, Rome's Responsibility for the Assassination of President Lincoln. Also serving on that committee was Lew Wallace, who would later write the famous novel Ben-Hur. John Surratt, one of the conspirators, was found in the employ of the Papal Army when tracked down. It's interesting to note, and President Lincoln had lamented the Pope's interference in the war by his acknowledgement that Confederate President Davis was indeed the head of a sovereign nation. This quote, and I'm reading from Charles Twinnicky, who claimed to be prominent Roman Catholics claim that this is a fraud, but this is from the book by Charles Twinnicky that I mentioned earlier. Quote, this war would never have been possible without the sinister influence of the Jesuits. We owe it to Popery that we now see our land reddened with the blood of our noblest sons. Though there were great differences of opinion between the South and the North on the question of slavery, neither Jeff Davis nor any one of the leading men of the Confederacy would have dared to attack the North had they not relied on the promise of the Jesuits that under the mask of democracy, the money and the arms of the Roman Catholics, even the arms of France, were at their disposal if they would attack us. Charles Twinnicky wrote that in 50 Years in the Church of Rome, page 388. So take it for what you will. But Mary Todd Lincoln is one of the most written about women in American history. Usually what is written about her is not very approving. She appeared to love the limelight, was also appeared to be mentally unstable. She lived to experience the death of her husband and two of her sons, only to be finally declared legally insane. Having lost her mother at a young age, she grew up insecure and highly competitive but moody. According to some writers, she, more than Abraham, had a passion to live in the White House. She suffered distrust while First Lady because many of her relatives were rebels. She was accused of sending communications to the enemy, and a 1905 newspaper article told of how President Lincoln went before a Senate committee to defend her innocence. At a time when ambitious women have more constructive outlets for their abilities and talents, she might have had a different reputation. Excuse me. As it was in her day, a demanding attitude was often called throwing tantrums, and moodiness was attributed to a weakness in the feminine character. She certainly merits your independent study. Next, we're going to talk about Andrew Johnson and his term as president, and then go from there to some very change in American history that was radical and extreme. So we'll go from there next time. Thank you for listening.